Hi guys, hi, how's it going? How you doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today we're doing the next palette review video in my palette roulette series, in which I pick a palette, I utilize it for a week or two or maybe more. I come back to you, I talk to you about the good, the bad, the ugly, show you some pictures, share my experiences with the palette, and then we swatch them and pull another palette. And I hope that sounds like something you're interested in. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I'm a lover of all things high and colorful beauty and self-care. I also work in the beauty industry as a field leader for Ulta Beauty. I get a lot of education in my position. I like to bring you that education here, but ultimately I'm just out here talking about makeup because I love to talk about makeup, and I'm assuming you also like to talk about makeup or you probably wouldn't be here. So if that all sounds like something you're interested in, let's do it. Let's talk about some makeup. Alrighty, alright. So, my house is full of people. My son is downstairs playing the guitar or something. So if you hear little guitar noises, that's it. I apologize, but my mic is super good and it picks up on all those things. I can't really help it, and I need to film. So there's that. Today, we'll be going over the NATASHA Denona I Need a Nude palette. This is, I think, her most recent besides the Xenon, right? So this is the one that came out right before the Xenon palette did. And I did pick this up when it came out. I just haven't touched it until now. So let's jump into this. So this is the NATASHA Denona I Need a Nude palette. This palette is one of her midi size palettes. So it is a $69 palette with 15 shades at 0.61 ounces or 0.041 ounces per pan. Same size as approximately a single ColourPop eyeshadow. This is a cruelty-free, paraben-free, and mineral oil-free formula. The packaging on this is the same kind of packaging that we saw when she launched the Retro Glam palette, where it has that kind of plexi up on top, and it's got kind of a really cool like motif going on the inside of that plexi, and the plexi makes it look very kind of 3D-esque. Other than that, it is just blush pink. It does have the holes on the back so that you can pop out the individual shades, and then the little sticker on the back that tells you a little bit about this palette, such as shelf life. It does lay flat, but it also stands up like this, so you are able to use it if you need to as like a vanity mirror if you are going out of town. And this is what the shades look like for this palette. So as I said, there are 15 shades in this palette. They are nude, neutrals, inspired by a minimalist stone architecture moment. And I think that she hit the nail on the head, to be honest. This does have 4.8 stars at Ulta with 445 reviews, 4.9 stars on NATASHA Denona with 628 reviews, and 4.8 stars on Sephora with 498 reviews. I think I would probably put this into the 4.6, 4.7 star rating, only because, let's just be honest, this palette is not my color story, right? It's definitely not a palette that was made for Donna, and that's totally okay. But because I love NATASHA Denona and I love her formula, and at the end of the day, I could probably keep every single one of my NATASHA Denona palettes in my collection and have every color that I needed in the rainbow. Maybe not a large variety of those colors, but every color that I needed to pick up this palette. There are 5 formulations in this palette. So you're going to get 7 creamy mattes, 2 metallics, 3 sparkling foiled, 2 sparkling wet, and 1 glossy wet. The sparkling foiled shadows are relatively new. The sparkling wet and glossy wet, I think, are new to this specific palette. The metallics are all made with crushed crystals and pearls. It is the elegance and glamour of a NATASHA Denona eyeshadow palette, and everybody on the platform loves this palette, except me. I think, I mean, this just goes back to what I said. I think that we can all agree that this is just not a me color story. I do think that this is, you know, slightly preference, but I also think that it is slightly because this is the only palette that I have had and used in a very long time where I got an eye look almost done and then took off the eye look because it just wasn't working for me. You know, Natasha Denona sets up her palettes in a way where you can work with this quad or this quad or this quad or row after row after row and have a look. I do like to bounce around in a palette regardless of how that's set up to do a look. And I find that I am pretty successful most of the time in doing that. I love Natasha Denona's formula. Don't get me wrong. I think that she has one of the better formulations for eyeshadows in the beauty space. I will always think that her shadows are, bar none, best out there. I just didn't love this palette. I think it's easy to use. I think it blends well. I just didn't love it. I'm not sure if it's the cool tones or it's the soft elegance of it. Like, I really do feel like this is an elegant, soft, classic color story. And it's maybe just not one that needed to be in my collection. It's very work appropriate for those of you that are looking or seeking out a Natasha Denona color story in a midi size palette that would work well for you throughout every single day, anything that you've got to do. This is going to be a great palette for those moments because I truly do think that this is a palette that you can use no matter what the day calls for. Except for maybe those nighttime looks, I definitely don't think it goes super glam. The center shade here, Muse, is going to be that color that gives you all the glitz and glam that you might be looking for in a eyeshadow. But other than that, I think most of the shimmers are toppers. I've got 2 shimmers on my lid today. I do love them, but you have to pack them on to get like any kind of like real oomph out of them because they're basically built as a topper. The sparkling foiled shades in here, Ella, Muse, and Filigree. So Ella, Muse, and Filigree are all going to have a little bit more of that pigmentation that you're used to seeing in a really nice Natasha Denona shadow as far as a sparkly like metallic shadows goes, but they are a little bit more chunky and they offer a little bit of texture, not necessarily bad texture, but they do offer a little bit more texture with a beautiful shine. You are going to see quite a bit of fallout out of those shadows. The sparkling and glossy wet formula, so Delilah, Sheen, and Mia. So Delilah, Sheen, and Mia. These are just, I would say, a little bit less right off the bat pigmented. I don't think that they're bad. Like, both Sheen and Mia are in my eye look today. So I have Mia up here and Sheen back here. I don't think that they're necessarily bad. I do think that they will show up in an eye look. I just think that you have to pack them on just a little bit more. These are meant to top something and change the overall eye look in and of itself. I just don't ever use them as toppers. I use them as a shadow that goes down straight up on its own. Like, these 2 shadows are over the top of my primer, my eye primer. So that might be part of the problem. Maybe this one would have done wonders under or over the top of like one of these pink tones and looked better. Maybe this one would do wonders over this like peachy tone and look better, or I would feel more pleased with it. I'm just not sure, but I didn't find them to be horrendous on their own though either. These are really, really long-lasting shadows, just like any other Natasha Denona shadow. I would say 10 to 12 hours in, I was still sporting an eye look that looked like I had pretty much just applied it, as long as I was using like a primer. I would say for performance reasons, They do well over a prime dye or an unprimed dye, but for longevity reasons, they definitely do better on a prime dye. On an unprimed dye, they're still going to last you an all-day wear. It's just going to maybe last a couple, 2 or 3 hours longer on a primed eye. You will want to use a drier primer though, because these kind of shadows will definitely stick on a more tacky primer, and then you're just stuck with that shade in one place. Now, Natasha Denona shadows, I have noted in my years working with them, they do better when you're patting on the shade versus swiping on the shade, and that might have been part of the problem with the 2 eye looks that I did put onto my eyes and then try to work with and then had to take off my eyes, is because I did do quite a bit of trying to blend them out or blend other colors into them, and therefore utilizing like windshield wiper motions. And Natasha Denona shadows don't 100% work in that way. They like to be patted on and then just lightly blended. But I do know how to manipulate Natasha Denona eyeshadows. I mean, she's my favorite formula. I've been working with her, formulation for quite some time in my makeup life. Her shadows do take a little bit more of finesse, but once you've got it, you've got it. I just didn't find that I was having a really great time with this eyeshadow palette, in addition to the fact that I didn't love very many of the looks that I got out of the eyeshadow palette. And that tells me that it's more about color story than it is anything else. They do blend like a dream as long as you're finessing them in the right way. There is no fading or creasing at all, not even with the more, tacky or the more textured of the shades, like the sparkling foiled shades. That's always a good thing. I would say that these stay put through sweat and watery eyes, only because I worked out in them, got out of doing what I was doing, went to go wash off my face and left my eye look, and they looked perfection. So, and I was sweating. So there's that. And except for those foiled shades, I would say that there's no fallout in this palette, which is really great news. Am I sorry that I bought it? No. And I do think that it is a great palette. I just think that it just wasn't meant for me, and that's totally okay. I would say also that if you're not used to Natasha Denona pigmentation, like the pigmentation in these shadows is quite significantly darker than what it appears in these pans. Therefore, it was really hard to have a shade that you could use really to blend out a lot. This peachy shade Fair is still quite a bit darker than it appears in the pan, and next to Stone, it was really hard to use Fair to blend out Stone, because Fair is pretty pigmented, and over the top of Stone, it kind of mutes it out, which is whatever. I just think this palette wasn't made for me, and that's totally okay. Do I think it has a place in my collection? Sure, because these are shadows that I don't think that I have in my collection. As far as the color story, I don't think I have this color story in my collection at all. I mean, I don't really have much more to say except for that it is beautiful. I do like it. This eye look that I have on is just meh. I didn't feel my most, I guess that's what it comes down to. I didn't feel my most glamorous or beautiful self with these eyeshadows on my eyes. And that's not Natasha Denona's fault. And truly, it's not my fault either. It's just not a color story that's made for me, and that's totally okay. I am not, you guys know, I am not a person that relishes in a one and done eyeshadow look. I'm not a person that relishes in an eyeshadow look that you can barely see. My work appropriate eyeshadows are the same blues and pinks and oranges that I wear every other day when I'm utilizing a rainbow palette. those are totally fine for me. If I was maybe more into neutral, granted, I have become more neutral eye look centric lately, but they're still really dark neutral eye looks. I think that this is just a lighter version of the neutral eye looks that I really love a beautiful neutral smoky eye, and I don't feel like you can get as deep with this palette as what I prefer. So not my fault, but also not Natasha Denona's fault. Overall, this is a really good palette, and I would 100% recommend it to somebody like, so my daughter Zoe, my oldest daughter Zoe, she's 23, she's a teacher, and she likes a barely there eyeshadow look. I would definitely recommend this palette to her. I just don't think that it's not my color story, bottom line. So everybody else on the planet that loves this palette probably loves it for really good reason. It is the same quality Natasha Denona formulations. They're all new shades. None of them are repeats out of another palette. It is a beautiful, beautiful eyeshadow palette, and some of these shimmers are so gorgeous, but it's just not my color story. How many times am I going to say that? Okay, so let's swatch this. This is Stone. Stone is a matte medium warm taupe. I think that that's the other thing. Like, everybody said that this was a cool tone palette, and while it looks rather cool tone and there are some cool tone shades in it, it does lean very warm on my skin as well, but not corally warm, and I think that that's part of the problem with me as well. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure what it is about this palette. So we have Stone, then we have Whisper. Whisper is a metallic light nude pink. It is really pretty. I loved it in my inner corner, and it's one of those shades that looks like nothing as you turn but head on. It's super brilliant. Then we have Ella. Ella is one of the sparkling foils. It's a warm, like, fawn color. And that one you can see does have a lot more depth to it than the other shadow, the other metallic right next to it. Then we have Vague, a matte, medium warm, like dusty rose shade. And then we had Travertine. And Travertine is a metallic soft amber. We have Delilah. Delilah is a sparkling wet silver brown, and it definitely looks wet on an eye look. All of them do. The other two of these sparkling wet shadows I'm wearing in my eye look today. Then we have the deepest one in the palette, which is called Silhouette, and it is a matte coffee brown. Beautiful brown. Love this. Then we have Muse. Muse is the most stunning shade in the palette. This is a sparkling foil champagne color. Then we have Fair. Fair is that matte, like light peachy rose color. Then we have Filigree. And Filigree is the last of the sparkling foils, and it's a medium neutral brown. Last row, we have Wit, which is a matte light warm rose shade. I would say kind of like a light peachy shade. Then we have Sheen, which is a glossy wet. It says warm champagne, but I would say that I would challenge that this is kind of like an orange sherbet color. Then we have Tender, which is a matte medium taupe. This actually was one of my favorite shades in the palette to use. Then we have Mesh. Mesh is a light dusty rose, which I gotta tell you, it doesn't look rose at all. Then we have Mia, which is the sparkling wet icy pink. Those are all the shades in the palette, and I think that it maybe shouldn't be super hard to see why this just isn't the palette for me. I mean, you can see there are some really stand out you know, metallics in this palette, but for the most part, they're all just kind of really thin. And maybe that's it. Like, I don't need it to be like a super thick metallic, but I feel like I was trying too hard to get these metallics to show up. Yes, I'm very well aware that they were toppers, and it clearly states that they are toppers, but except for the sparkling foiled shades, all of them were toppers because they were either glossy wet or sparkling wet or sparkling foiled. And there's only 3 sparkling foiled out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shimmers. So out of 8 shimmers, 3 of them were pigmented enough to stand alone on their own. I don't know. I wanted to love this palette, and I still love it for the purpose that it plays in my collection, but also like I'm just confused because a lot of these browns are slated as roses, and they're definitely not rosy tones. They're definitely like a neutral brown in tone. This is the only deep shade. Even this like deeper pink looks very similar on the eye to this pink just because of the pigmentation of it. So you have to mix one of them. You have to mix them with the browns, and they don't always look fantastic. I do have like this pink and this brown together on my eye look today, and I think it looks nice, but it was really hard trying to figure out what to pair with it as far as a shimmer goes, because the rest of the shimmers are very sheer, thin, and not really the same like colors as that. So it's just such a bland palette. I'm gonna quit because I don't want anybody to come off with the thought process that I hate this palette, because I don't. I think it is beautiful. I think that the toppers are beautiful. I think that it just isn't my color story, and that's okay. You win some, you lose some. I'm gonna go pick my next palette. I will be right back. The palettes that I'm picking to review next time are going to be these guys here. So I do have both of the Angelica Nyquist Unzai most recent collab, the Halloween collab. So we have the Trick or Treat palette and the Little Ghost palette. I have family pictures coming up, so I may not use these for family pictures, but I did try and pick a palette that I knew I could come up with a pretty decent, mellow color story to make an eye look out of. I do think that this Trick or Treat palette maybe will fit the bill. I think this has more normal colors in it and will be more suited to like family pictures. This one is the Little Ghost palette, and like I'm really super excited about this palette. If any palette draws my attention to it more, it is this one. I'm really excited to try these out. Who knows, I may do family picture photos with this on my eye. I may pick something else to put on my eye. I'm not sure, but these are the 2 palettes that I'll be reviewing next time we do this. Again, I'm not mad at this palette. This was a really great palette. It did blend super, super easily. And if that is your color story, I would 100% recommend it, because it is beautiful. I just didn't feel my best self in that color story. And I know better. I know better than that. So now these color stories, these are my jam. I knew better. Or I should have known better anyways. So with that said, let me know your thoughts on the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. I do love it. I'm not mad at it. I would recommend it. It's just not for me. I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts on the Halloween or Unzai in and of itself. If you've used these palettes or you've used Odin's Eye in the past. I have used Odin's Eye in the past. I do know that I like their formula. I've heard that these are outstanding, so I can't wait to get them on my face. With that said, I hope that you and yours are well. I hope that your Thanksgiving is going to be fab, because that should be tomorrow. And I hope that you are all safe and healthy and getting along as best you can, that you are all staying mentally stable out there right now, because Lord knows I'm not, and that you are all loving each other, but loving each other from afar. And until next time, friends, bye.